You ready? Great. It's also simple. All right.
Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will now call the roll.
Councilmember Porter,
Present.
Councilmember Middleton. Present. Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councilmember Dundon,
Present.
Councilmember Costi,
Present.
Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Present.
Council President Matavetsky.
Present.
Thank you.
We will now begin discussion of legislation. Councilman Hotchkiss will begin by introducing RL 20. What? 4-17. 67. Okay, thank you.
RL 2467 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement number 2 with GHD for CSO-LTCP post-construction compliance monitoring program. Come on down, Ron. Thank you. How you doing this evening, Ron?
Good evening.
So can you give us a little background on this and why we need the monitoring program?
Okay, the monitoring has to do with our combined sewer overflows. There's a long-term control plan which was written for the CSOs and what they had to do and so forth. And part of that is post-construction compliance monitoring, which is required by DEC. And that's what this is for. That we have to do monitoring of the CSO and of the rivers, both Shenango and Susquehanna this year at certain times. So I think we're basically doing it 3 months out of the year so we can get some data. After we have that, they'll write a report and then DEC will tell us whether we're good for a few more years or if we got to do some more construction on our CSOs.
Okay. Ron, can I ask you to add a budget transfer page to this before the next business meeting? Because I couldn't find where the budget transfer line was in the budget.
Okay,
Thank you so
I
much.
thought it was there when we had it upstairs, but I will make sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other further questions.
Anyone else have a question? Councilman Kavanaugh.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Lake. I'm just, why does this particular monitoring regime not just run through the sewage plant and their monitoring and sampling and such?
Because we're actually 3 separate entities,
I thought it would be
Johnson-
something like that.
Johnson City, Binghamton, and the treatment plant. So the treatment plant has no control over the CSOs. Johnson City has some and we have some.
All right. So these are specifically, these, just trying to understand all the terms, like these are specifically the stormwater overflows? Is that what these are, or general sewage overflows?
Yeah,
Oh.
we call it CSOs. It's combined sewer overflow. So it's storm and sanitary. That's why we have to monitor it.
Okay.
Both Binghamton and Johnson City have a number of combined systems.
So it's convenient that the monitoring is joint between the 2 cities, essentially, yeah.
Say that again?
It's convenient that it's monitoring that Binghamton and Johnson City team up to do the monitoring, or is there only one permit? Or,
No, they have to do the same thing. So we got together and hired the same firm.
okay,
And they're the ones who wrote the report and did it last year for us.
Okay.
So they're familiar with it.
thank you for making that clear to me.
Any further questions? Councilman Hotchkiss.
Yeah, how does this kind of interact with the DEC monitoring and sampling to make sure that the plant is in compliance?
This doesn't have anything to do with the plant.
Okay.
This is strictly ours, the cities.
Okay.
That's why I explained we're still 3 separate entities. the plant doesn't come out of its area and we don't do the plant.
Okay,
All three of us have responsibilities to DEC.
all right. Thank you.
Ron, does this have a tight timetable to it to sign into this to start getting your samples?
This will go through the end of the year.
Okay, so, okay.
Further questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, now I'll be turning things over to Councilwoman Middleton, the Chair of the Municipal and Public Affairs Committee for RL 24-68, resolution authorizing the mayor to accept $25,000 grant from Broome County for a mural at Morabito Station. And we welcome down presenter Sarah Close.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, Councilmember, how are you?
I'm good. Can you just tell us about this resolution?
Yes, so RL 24-68 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a $25,000 grant from Broome County for a mural at Morabito Stadium. We applied for and received a grant from the Broome County Small Community Grant Program. Since being awarded funding in 2018 through New York State's Greater Binghamton Fund, the county has successfully managed the murals and mosaics program and directly supported the installation of many works of public art in the Greater Binghamton area. But as funding for that program has been almost fully expended, the county asked the city to consider an application to the Small Community Fund to support art in the Stadium District, continuing our partnership and adding additional art to our community. With the presence of the Rumble Ponies as an anchor institution in the Stadium District, and after conversations between the city, county, and Rumble Ponies leadership, we proceeded with an application for art at the stadium and in coordination with the Rumble Ponies. The city will enter into an agreement with the county per the attached and manage the project in coordination with Broome County's Office of Planning and Economic Development. The project was funded at 50% of the total ask, and the scope will be reduced proportionately. We will determine the appropriate scope modification in coordination with the funder, Broome County, and match will come from the Office of Economic Development, Parks and Recreation, and the mayor's office staff time as appropriate. So really, this is just a continuation of a program that the county's been doing. You guys have probably seen a lot of the public art that's been supported through the initial murals and mosaics funding. With that funding winding down, they just wanted to make sure there was an opportunity to have this move forward. There's been some conversations with Rebel Ponies over the last couple of years about adding a public art element to the stadium. And so this was determined to be the best way to facilitate that. So we'll be managing the contract, so managing Broome County's money and facilitating that directly with the Rebel Ponies in the stadium itself.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I saw in here that there was a part that it's engaging with students and young professionals. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the target audiences for the Rebel Ponies is to try to get more current Binghamton University students, but also students of all kinds at the stadium, as well as more young professionals. Create this as a destination for young professionals to stay and live. One of the things that we hear is, quote unquote, there's nothing to do in Binghamton. We all know that's not true. But to the extent that we can continue to highlight our assets and continue to highlight the things that are great about this community and bring people in, you know, maybe you're not a baseball person, but you're an art person, you can find a way to interact with the Stadium District and with Rebel Ponies. Maybe that gets you to a game. Maybe that kind of increases your excitement about staying in this area. So that's why that fits that pillar.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
Any further questions? Councilman Kavanaugh.
What's timeline for design and completion? And then also, does this have to go through COD?
So I do not believe this has to go through COD because it's not a historic district or historic property. Timeline, so this is technically funded through December 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024. Given that the county just allocated these funds in March, we'll have to talk to them about whether they're flexible on that schedule. Obviously, with the Rebel Ponies operations, as well as the shortened season, just given the weather in our area, we have to see whether we can complete this year. That was the intention behind it, but just given kind of the delays in getting this money out the door. And then obviously we have to go through our legislative process to accept the funds and then continue to work with Broome County to, as I said, modify that scope in a way that is sufficient to them as the funders of the project. So ideally the end of 2024, realistically, we're probably looking at 2025.
I was thinking it might have to go through COD, not because it's historic, but because it's a municipally owned facility. That was mine.
I can look into that. I think that the only mechanism we need to go through is the donation of public art to the city because it's a city facility. But I will have to look into that because the ownership over there is funky. I think Bureau owns part of the property, so I'd have to look into that more.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councilman Hotchkiss.
Hi, Sarah. So I think, is it safe to assume that the
Potentially, that got cut off, but he was asking about the exterior, whether this is on the exterior. This will definitely be on a wall that is able to be seen from outside of the stadium. There is a question whether the exterior wall that we would like to use, which is along Henry Street, is able to support a mural. It is, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not an even surface. So we'd have to have an artist who was proficient in working in surfaces that aren't perfect. There is a wall on the interior that can be seen through the gates. That's kind of our secondary option, but our preference would be to have it on the outside if the conditions allow it.
Okay, thank you. I guess, and is like the contents of the mural like known right now? Or is it just still up in the air, like a baseball themed something?
That is the idea at this time. It is not set in stone at this point. There's a couple of different processes we can go through. The county has done a call for proposals to develop a list of artists who are eligible through the Murals and Mosaics program. They have used or reached out to, and for a variety of reasons, it hasn't been a good fit, everyone in that book so far. So one of the things that we're talking about with the county is whether it makes sense to do another call to get more artists so that we can facilitate these moving forward, or whether this should exist under the auspices of the Henry Street project that has a branding element to it already.
Thank you. So if there was an artist that was watching this video and thought they were proficient in doing that work, how could they apply or us? I don't know.
Yeah.
Throw their name in the hat.
Great question. I think it's going to depend on the county. So per the contract that they have us signed, we have to abide by their procurement, I believe. So I'm going to be asking them to kind of help me understand what their requirements are as our funder. So I'm not sure if in the conversations we've had to date, they have also been unclear about whether we should or could use the existing book, or whether they'd like to do another call, or whether they would like us to just handle it outside of them. And so that's a conversation we need to have with them. So if somebody is interested, I would say they're more than welcome to reach out. I imagine if there's a public process, we won't be able to engage with anyone individually, but I'm happy to solicit interest.
So that's just go to the Economic Development
Mm.
Department. Okay. Thanks. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Now I turn things over to Councilman Hotchkiss, Chair of Planning for RL 24-69, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept an energy efficient community block grant from DOE in the amount of $76,690 for the purchase of electric vehicles. And we invite down presenter Dr. Burling, Director of Planning.
Hello, Dr. Burling.
Hi, good evening.
Do you just want to give us a overview of what we're looking at here?
Yep, absolutely. We received an email inviting us to apply for this funding. It's a formula grant through Department of Energy. That means the amount was already established. We just had to submit an application that was acceptable. So one of their, I guess, funding lines was fleet electrification, which is what we've been looking into doing, but it's expensive, so we can't do everything all at once, but we can do it a bit at a time with funding. So we submitted an application that was fully accepted. So.
Great. Is there any, maybe this is too far along, but do we know if there is a specific type of vehicle that you're looking at or a department that this would be going to?
We have two Nissan Leaf electric that we bought with a different grant. They're one of the more affordable. I think they are the most affordable electric vehicles, so we would most likely get the same. I have a mini bid prepared that I haven't submitted to OGS to see what prices are like and what we could get for buying, 3 or 4 at a time. Hopefully we'll get a better price. And I know that, the code department needs vehicles and Parks and Rec needs vehicles. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can touch on price. I work in the car business.
Okay.
So doing research on them, the Nissan Leaf, the base version's $28,140 MSRP. So I mean, 4 of them would be roughly 115 grand.
Wow.
So I'm sure you could,
yeah.
there's discounts on them, things
Yeah,
like
I'm
that.
not sure what the New York State OGS price is, but it's around there. I can't imagine it being too much less, but it'll be a little bit less. So we wrote the grant for up to 4, so we can buy less. But with the DEC ZEV rebates, it hasn't opened yet, but when it does open, that's about 5,000 per vehicle. And then with the NYSERDA rebate, it'd be another 1,000. So that would be, if we bought 4 vehicles, that'd be 24,000 right off the top. So if we decided to go with 4, we'd be buying the 4th one basically for 13,000. And if we just did 3, it would be fully funded with some money left over after the rebates, like 9,000 we could put towards a new charging station or something along those lines. We really don't need another charging station, but I wouldn't say no if it was free, So we do have the option that way. So,
I was thinking that this would just be like one vehicle, so that's cool, that you can get a little bit more.
yeah.
Do you know if this is, this money is gonna be available through like DOE on like an annual basis, or is this just kind of like a one-time?
I
Wow.
believe it is, yes.
Oh,
So-
so like we can apply again next year and
Yep.
just keep.
And they
keep
had
applying?
5 or 6 different goals. So as long as you applied for something underneath one of those, they would consider your application. So there's a couple others we could try next year. So I will be applying
Great,
next year.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, my other question was just like, is there more money through DOE that we're not currently pursuing that we could be?
Yeah, no, not through this. This is through the State and Community Energy Program Office. They have funds available to the state for weatherization and home efficiency rebates, but we don't apply for them. The state gets it and then we apply to the state. So the state had applied for $158 million. I think they've received 5 million. So that was just awarded recently. So as soon as that money is available, then we'll submit an application to the state.
Thank you. I'm all set if anybody's got anything else.
Councilman Kavanaugh.
So Dr. Burling, you're not sure where these vehicles are going to end up, if they're going to end up in code or parks. So your office just jumped on the grant just to
Yep.
get it rolling and get
Yep.
something in there. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Code has asked me to help find funding for new vehicles. So,
Yeah, Dr. Burling, correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Mhm.
think Code, who uses their vehicles, as you all can imagine, on
An
a
awful
very
lot.
regular basis,
Yep.
came to Dr. Burling with a need for cars. Dr. Burling found this grant and applied for it and got the funding because her application was so stellar. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
put that in there too.
thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'm a little bit curious about where you might consider putting in more charging stations. We were just, Councilman Kavanaugh and I were touring Ross Park, and I know
It's a good
when I
possibility.
go to Rec
Yep.
Park, I get a little jealous of their charging stations. So,
I know the rec
Options
park
are
ones
good.
get well used.
yes, they are definitely. well
That would be
used.
my recommendation, was the second one there, just
Yeah.
because it is pretty heavily used, but it's totally open.
Yep.
So
Um,
publicly accessible. So
Okay.
we
Eh.
don't charge for any of our charging stations, is free.
All right, well, thank you.
Mhm. Should I just, I think
Yes.
so, yeah.
Right, yes. So we'll keep things with Councilman Hotchkiss, Chair of Planning Committee, with RL 24-70, an ordinance to reformat R 23-92 to meet his State Historic Preservation Office resolution requirements. And again, our presenter is Dr. Burling, Director of Planning.
Just walk us through this.
We submitted our, well, this has already gone through city council, received approval and a legislation. We submitted it to the state granting agency and, they preferred that we use their format. So that's basically what this is.
So when Dr. Berling came to me, there was a resolution, essentially the same resolution passed December 6th of 2023. The state sent it back wanting it in a different format. That's on the page directly before the December 6th resolution. Because of obviously the different council and the different content, we had to basically represent it to council for an amendment to get it in the correct format so the state would accept it.
Yes, this is an amendment. I'm sorry.
So is there anything that would have prevented that from happening so that there's not like this back and
No.
forth, or is it just the,
It was an option to use their format or to use ours. And we've always submitted ours. So I was surprised when it wasn't accepted. And I did bring, if you're interested, maybe I didn't bring it. Hold on 1 second. I went through the requirements. Oh, yeah, I did. Point by point and found them on our legislation, but they still wanted it in their own format. So if you wanted to see this, I mean, we did make the effort to say, we have met all the requirements. This is the style of format we always use, but it's not worth arguing. It's a lot of money, so.
right? Yeah, so
But I apologize for this.
why would they have the option to make it optional if?
Yep, I agree. So, but I would leave this with you if you want to just see it.
Right. I don't have any other questions about this. I think pretty familiar with this project. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
I,
Councilman Kavanaugh.
I mean, Sophie, I assume you approved this already, but it's okay that we go back and amend that, a piece of legislation from a previous council with all different people at this point, rather than just pass a new one?
Well, we essentially are going to pass a new one. We're amending, taking the content of the old one and putting it into a different format. We looked into if there was any other way to accomplish that without having to bring it back to council, but because, like I said, it's a different council and the content is just different enough where I think it has to be represented and revoted on, and we can essentially supersede the prior resolution.
So, but it's a new, it will have a new RL. It's a new,
Right,
correct? Okay.
yes.
Right.
It wouldn't just be amended RL?
We can look, no, I don't
Okay.
think so. I think the content is too different.
Okay,
I think it's just cleaner to do a new one
okay.
and then supersede
Got it.
2392.
Any further questions? Just to make sure I'm following everything correctly, the local match that's written in here is the money that we bonded for,
Mhm.
correct? Yeah, okay. So, great, thank you.
Yep.
And next I'll be handing things over to Councilman Porter, who's chair of the Employees Committee for RL 24-66, an ordinance to amend O 24-21, sections E and F to make clear that all payments will be deducted first from New York State pensions. And our presenter is Samantha Costello, Deputy Clerk. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks
Hel-
for having me.
Hello, Sam.
Hi.
Can you just give us an overview of what?
Sure, yeah. So RL 24-66 is an ordinance to amend the language from the retirement bill that you all passed in the last business meeting. This specifically refers to sections E and F to make sure that it's clear that the deduction will come from a New York State pension first, and then the person will be responsible after should that pension amount expire or be relieved. It's a pretty clear-cut, very simple change of a small piece of language that we just want to make it as clear as possible.
Okay,
Any further questions?
I don't have any.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next I'll be handing things over to Councilman Kavanaugh, Chair of Finance Committee. We'll to go over Comptroller's quarterly financial report with our presenter, our Comptroller Chuck Shaker. This is part of requirements laid out in our city charter.
Chuck, come on down. All right.
I did want to have our corporation counsel speak to we're going to be looking at some financial statements that are in draft form. We had been interested in making them released, but in discussions with corporation counsel, we want to hold back, and I'm going to let corporation counsel speak to that before we start the discussion.
Yes, there was a lot of discussion about balancing the desire to be transparent versus the desire to make sure that we were as accurate as possible and didn't disseminate any information that wasn't completely accurate. So what Chuck has just handed out is a draft just outlining certain revenue lines and expense lines that exist in the city. It's a draft in draft format, and because it's just a snapshot in time, it's subject to change. So I think to publicly release it might be misleading and create further problems. As many of you know, Chuck's office is not nearly as large as it should be, and there are certain things that are not updated on a minute-by-minute basis. And we want to make sure that we don't release anything that would be misleading to the public. And there are certainly going to be changes between now and the final May report from the auditors, which will be released and will be disseminated to everybody, and you'll have a chance to go over that with a fine-tooth comb and ask Chuck and his team any questions that you might have, as well as the auditors. And I think my guidance for this would be to review this, see what the state of the finances are in a understanding that it's a snapshot in time, like today, and it's subject to change tomorrow, basically on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis, because there's just so much that goes into the city's finances, as you can imagine, with so many employees and so many millions of dollars of moving capital. So what I would say is take a look at it, familiarize yourself with the things that exist, use this time between now and the May report to ask Chuck for any clarification or any questions that you might have, so that you're ready when the auditor's report comes out and you're familiar with the content of what exists in the city. So you can ask the auditors any questions that you may have. Chuck, did I miss anything?
No, I mean, I think what's important is when this legislation was set up back in like 2011, 2012, at the time, the city was probably about 2 or 3 years behind on filing statements. In the last 10 years, we've been filed everything, both the AUD and the audited on time. And as I told Councilman Kavanaugh, I think this is a good idea to do. This is probably your biggest responsibility as a council person, is the financial part of the city. And the problem at the end of the year is having a meeting in February when I don't even have probably all the bills in until the middle of March. Okay, it's not a good time to do it. I would suggest that you would change that February date going forward to a May date, because the financials will be filed by the end of April. And then in May, I could give you a good update on last year, and then give you a quick synopsis of what's happened in the first quarter. I think that would be a fairer and a more accurate situation. To come down in February, I wouldn't even be close to giving you a fair number.
Well, and Chuck, I think an additional concern too would be if a draft report was released and it differs from the final report in the May audit, it could be very misleading and create further consequences down the road.
And the biggest misleading thing is when we have to do a bond in April, I have to give reasonable estimates to the bonding people. Like just last week, we went out to bond $60 million roughly. And I had to give the bidders estimates of what's the fund balance of each account, what is our cash flow, different things like that. If I gave you guys a statement that I hadn't updated and you guys published it and it was different than what I said, we could have problems. And there are issues out there every single year that I'm trying to reconcile and correct. And I'm going through that all weekend. I spent 15 hours in here trying to go through. You've seen all the documents I sent you. If you looked at it, it's probably 300 pages. I go through every single one of those line items to make sure they're accurate. okay, before I do this and finalize it. Whether it's a revenue item, whether it's a balance sheet item, whether it's an expense item, I'm going through them. And this, say to do this in February is just not reasonable for accuracy, okay? And that's my number one thing when I post a financial statement, that it is accurate. But with that being said, I did talk to Councilman Kavanaugh on Friday and we had a discussion and he made a good suggestion, which I put here, is put together a basic executive summary of what's in that request, which is balance sheet items and the revenue and expenses, which this basically has here. So if I can start here and as I go through each page, maybe I go through each page, and then if you have a question on that page, you can ask me and then I'll answer those questions. So the first one is the summary of the general fund, which is the main fund of any city or county government. It's where all the tax dollars goes and gets spent out of there. Our balance sheet at the end of the year is, I'm estimating it to be at 41 million. Of that 41 million, 27.5 is cash. There's $10 million in receivables from outside sources, 4 million from Broome County for sales tax, 4 million from the sewer fund. And we have basically 2 million in prepaids for retirement and health insurance that we have to pay in 23 for the year 24. Liability wise, we have 22.9 million and 3 million of that is expenses that have come in 24 that were purchased or used in 23. The remaining of that portion is basically other liabilities and deferred revenues, and a majority of that is made up of deferred revenue and other liabilities associated with the ARPA funds. So when we took on the ARPA funds, we said we're gonna, if we didn't spend it, we owed it back to the federal government. I believe there's about 17 million at the end of the year that fit that category that we had not spent the money. Doesn't mean that we don't have contracts in it, but we have not spent the money. That leaves us a fund balance of 18.1. That's an increase of $500,000 from 22. 2.2 million of that is non-spendable. That would be prepaids and inventory that we have. 3 million in reserves. 1 million we appropriated towards the 24 budget, and 11.9 roughly in free fund balance or unrestricted fund balance. Revenue came in at 84.2 million. 33.7 of that is from tax payments from residents, 16.5 from sales tax, 15 million from the ARPA funds, and 9 million from state aid. That 9 million from state aid has probably been the same number for a good 20 years, I would bet. Expenses, 83.7. That is made up of 31.5 million in wages, 18.8 in benefits. Of those benefits, 8 million came from health insurance, 6.8 million in retirement, 6 million in debt service, 15 million in ARPA we expended last year, and 1.2 million in utilities, gas, electric.
All right. So that's the general fund overview, and then you have broken out the other individual funds on the following pages. How do folks feel? Do you want Chuck to keep going through and reading this? Do we want to take our own time and read it and review? Chuck is going to come down to the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday. So if anyone has questions, we can deal with them then or submit them specific questions. I think this is a useful snapshot, but it's also a preliminary one. And I would like Chuck, if he has some time, to maybe give us some forward guidance for this year, where we're at. I know you're still trying to get your first quarter stuff together, but if you could spend a little time and just give us just some general forward guidance and forward how we're looking, stuff coming in this year, stuff going out, anything unexpected. I think that might be better use of time now, but if anyone disagrees, speak up. And I saw Nate's hand go up a little bit. I don't know.
I don't know. I have questions now for this first line. Like, I don't know if we have to go through the whole thing, but the 17 million that's in the ARPA, is it earmarked or encumbered or what's?
I'm going to use the
And-
word allocated. It's
Allocated.
been allocated through legislation to be spent on certain items.
And then I'm guessing it's kind of a situation, I don't want to assume that it's something. I'm guessing it's like what we have going on with like Town and Country, where it's like, I don't think it's spent, but it's been allocated to support, like 3 million has been allocated to support that project, but it's like contingent on other funding happening. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That's an example of, yes.
Is there? I'd like to see that broken out further. But I can circle back with you another time for the other items.
I'll make a quick synopsis of the ARPA fund. I can either do it now or do it at the end, or whatever you want.
Right, so do you want to, you're referring to the ARPA at the end of this?
Yeah.
So if you turn to the end of the packet, the last 2 pages, I believe it's the last 2 pages, are all of the ARPA allocations, the total grants that we received, and then all of the allocations out. Now, I think what Councilman Hotchkiss is looking for would be the column that goes next to it, which would be what has actually gone out the door, and versus what is still hanging around.
And I don't have that here, Don,
I
but
see that.
I can get that.
Okay.
You know, when you could get that for us?
If you could give me to the end of this month, because I have to do all the filing by the end of this month also, along with the AUD with the state, okay? I'm having multiple people pull things together for me,
Okay.
okay? I could do that in the May meeting for sure, without a doubt. I will have that all documented.
Okay, yeah, I know, we just want to know, because I know people applied for ARPA funds, so we want to make sure
But
that
let-
there's something.
Well, let me state that very clearly for you right now. As of today, there is no ARPA funds available to be allocated out. Okay. Everything is, we've actually, as I came down about a month ago and took some money back out of the ARPA funds, I'm gonna have to do that again as I'm finalizing the books. If you go to the last page of this thing, not that this is an issue, but we've over allocated $761,906 in ARPA funds, and I sent this to you back in early March. And then on the lost revenue, we have 641,000 of unspent money. So there's basically 120,000 over allocated, I'll say, in ARPA funds as of today. I know that money's where that's coming from and it's going to come back. Okay, but at this point, there is no additional ARPA funds to be allocated out. This.
So when does that money come back?
Huh?
So you mentioned that, some of it's gonna come back. When does that happen?
I'm making journal entries as I'm closing the books. Okay, example being, we didn't spend all the money in Corp Council that had money allocated. So I gotta take that back. If we allocated $90,000 to her, she may have spent 84,000. So 6,000 will come back into the ARPA funds. So that's what I'm working on in closing out the books. When you look at this report, you can see the RLs, and I'll say 97% of these RL numbers are accurate. Sometimes when I first started this, some of them were the actual agreed upon RLs and some were the initial RLs I put in where they use 2 different numbers. Okay, but it will be in that time period right there. You'll find it. And these are the amounts that were allocated to each one of those RLs. But I can tell you how that money's been spent.
I mean, Councilman Kavanaugh, I think your suggestion was a good one in that there's a lot of information to digest and the numbers aren't solid yet because Chuck hasn't done his final audit. Perhaps Councilman Kavanaugh's suggestion of inviting Chuck back at the first work session in May to go over and give you a more solid answers on things rather than speaking in hypotheticals, because then I don't really think you're getting the information that you're looking for.
And as I've told everyone since you've been on board, and Mr. Kavanaugh's probably been the one that's taken advantage of the most. If you got questions, come up to my office and ask, okay? And I don't expect all of you to understand all the balance sheets and the year-to-date things, but I will try to help and teach you what's involved in it, so you have an understanding of what you see. And I will say this to everybody here. Some people understand accounting, some people do not, okay? There's not a stupid question to be asked to me. Okay, I want you guys to understand what's here.
Chuck, would the work session on May 6th give you enough time, or would you want the second work session on May 20th?
That should be fine. I would hope.
Okay.
I think if you can at least get this, if you get the ARPA expense report or what's been, actually spent sooner than that, that might be.
If I
helpful
can, I
for us.
will.
Okay,
Okay. It's not so much, I can run what's in the report. I just want to make sure it's accurate.
I understand.
Can you speak at a high level on like the general health of the finances?
That's a tough question. Let me say this, okay? Working in New York State is very difficult. I would love to see a $30 million fund balance, okay? We have 18. If you were to have a 30 million, the state would say you're overtaxing people. Okay, if that number was 9 million, they'd say you don't have enough. Okay, so it's like, what's the right number? And it's, if I had to make a guess, I think this is a healthy fund balance. I wish it was a little bit higher. Okay. But I don't think it's a bad fund balance at all. And, the one issue that we do have, and I was explaining this to Councilman Kavanaugh this morning, is in our sewer fund. And the sewer fund has a negative cash flow. And that negative cash flow is related to the fact that we bill out money 4 months after you use it. So in the month of May, we're billing out the water you used in January, February, March, and April. Okay, and then that bill goes out in May. So we're spending the 4 months of labor and generation, and so all year long, basically the bill that we just sent out in April includes bills for January, February, March, and December. Okay, and we still haven't got that December money yet. And we won't get that money going out in April till I think it's due in May 15th. Okay, so you got a pretty long cash flow issue across the board. To go along with that in the sewer fund is we have a lot of debt associated to the sewer plant that we have to pay during the year. That doesn't get reconciled till like September is when the sewage treatment plant finally reconciles it. And if there's a refund coming back, we'll see that in November. Okay, it's not only the city that's hurt by that, it's all the other municipalities involved in the sewage treatment plant, whether it's Vestal, Johnson City, Conklin, Kirkwood. They all have that same issue. They're not paying the debt up front like myself or the city and Johnson City, but they're not getting reconciled for a long period of time. And this has created is a deficit of $4 million that the sewer fund owes the general fund. And we need to try to fix that. And one of the things, Nate, I don't know if you were at the last at the last sewer plant, I'm trying to get them to approve an estimate, a bill now, so we can at least take 85% of the money that's coming back to the municipalities in April and get it on our books so we have the cash instead of waiting till September or October or November. Hopefully they go along with this. And I mean, Johnson City's on board with me. So hopefully we can get that passed. And what it looks like right now, they owe back to all the municipalities about $4.5 million. For the city, that's like over probably close to 2.5 million. Okay, that we'll be sitting on. So getting that money back will reduce that loan to the general fund. But that's probably the biggest problem that the city has right now is the sewer fund and the cash flow with it.
Thank you very much, Chuck, for coming down. We'll see you at Finance Committee on Thursday.
I'm sorry, I just had a.
Sorry,
Oh.
go ahead.
No, it was me. I just had another question. So, I know like we just started and we had some things like the Salvation Army that was allocated funding for ARPA. Then how are we still allocating that money to them if we don't have it?
I know there's money to take back.
Okay,
Okay, that's what I do know. Okay. I don't know the exact amount, but I have enough to cover this. I won't say I have $1 million, okay, but I'm probably gonna have somewhere between, I'm gonna say $150,000 and $200,000 more said and done.
Okay.
Well, I mean, did you have a question?
No, not at this time. I'm just going over, I'm looking over some of these funds. Most likely I'll gather my stuff and start looking this over and probably,
Shoot me an email.
Thursday,
Okay.
ask some questions.
Feel free to email me or give me a call and we'll get you answers.
Okay, thank you.
But I shot you an email earlier today about the debt service on the stadium. Yeah.
What I just borrowed was like $7,100,000 and I think $19,000. That was the total amount outstanding. I gotta make sure that we don't have anything from a prior year on there, but I don't think there is. Okay, but that's what's out there right now.
Yeah.
I will say this, think I know what Jared's been talking to you about, and the numbers that he's talking about is, I did an analysis, I think it's like 7 years of what that average cost was. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll motion.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said, oh, okay. See, I'm ready to go. I'll second it.
Great. Motioned by Councilman Dundon, seconded by Councilwoman Middleton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, we're adjourned.